Hey guys, Blake Calhoun, and a subdued episode of the podcast today as we mourn the passing of the Movi cinema robot. Yes, if you haven't heard, the beloved Movi cinema robot has been discontinued by FreeFly. And yes, I've decided to dedicate an entire podcast episode to its demise. Is that the right word? I don't know. Let's talk about it. What's up, guys? And today, yes, another episode of Almost Professional, the podcast about mobile filmmaking, DIY filmmaking, really all things filmmaking. Did I forget to say indie filmmaking? Yeah, I think I did. And there's an airplane going over. Pause. The Movi news isn't new news necessarily. I did a blog post about it actually 2 weeks ago, but it hasn't gotten as much coverage as I thought it would in the mobile video, mobile filmmaking community. To me, the Movi Cinema Robot was far and away the best smartphone gimbal, much better than anything from DJI or any of the other gimbals that are, again, dedicated to smartphones, and that's the key point. And truth be told, that's probably one of the reasons they don't make it anymore, and we'll get to that in a minute. Before that, though, I want to briefly say that I did start a second YouTube channel, and I've mentioned it in the past episode. And so that channel is up, and I would love for you to go over and check it out. I am posting this podcast on that channel, and I'm also making videos around a variety of filmmaking topics that are more about filmmaking lifestyle and less about gear and tech. Now, there'll be some gear and tech on the channel inevitably, but it's not a tech-driven channel. It's more about living the life of a freelance filmmaker and really kind of how you make it all work. And I'll also post behind the scenes stuff and my short films and stuff from my feature films, just kind of a variety of different filmmaking topics that I really can't put on my iPhone channel, not only because of the YouTube algorithm, it wouldn't know what to do with that content, but also most people subscribe to that channel for mobile video, mobile filmmaking. This podcast will continue to live on Anchor, that's where it's based, and of course it's syndicated out to Apple and Spotify and pretty much everywhere you can listen to podcasts. So that's not changing, but I am putting it on YouTube now too. And I think that's going to be good because that way I can interact with people, meaning with comments and that kind of thing. And it just opens up another avenue for people to hear the content. And one day, who knows, maybe I'll make an actual video version of the podcast, but that means I've got to get dressed and, comb my hair, and not something I normally want to do when I'm recording a podcast. But currently, I have a graphic up there, and I did an audiogram where you see the meters popping, and it's visually interesting. But, if people want to listen to it on YouTube, that's great. They can just put it on in the background. The second quick bit of housekeeping here is I've been talking about this audio course, and when this podcast is released, the audio course should be live on my website. It's called The Complete Guide to Smartphone Audio Production, and it is a beginner's course. That is a question I get routinely and have for years, is what is the best way to record good audio with a phone? And so I decided to take all the experiences I've had over the last, 6, 8 years, put them into a course related to the audio side of things. And truth be told, especially for beginners, audio really gets overlooked. How many times have you watched a YouTube video and the visuals look good, but the guy is talking and it sounds like he's in a cave? Or whatever the situation. Recording good audio is 50% or more of any production. The other thing is, I don't think people realize what you can do with your smartphone as it relates to audio. And that includes your iPad as well. I preach the same thing really about video as I am now about audio. But with audio, the cool thing is your device really doesn't matter because the audio recording pretty much stays the same. You could be using an iPhone 6, you could be using any Android. You don't have to have the latest, greatest iPhone 12 or whatever it is to record good audio. It's obviously more about the microphone and the techniques you use to record. And so anyway, that course is now available on my website at iphonographers.tv. So if you're interested in that, please check it out. Here is the statement from FreeFly regarding the ending of the Movi. Movi has been rocking and rolling in the mobile filmmaking world since we started shipping in late March 2017. So many awesome clips and films were created with it, and people love having the Movi as a part or all of their filmmaking memory capturing kits, whatever that means. To provide a great experience for customers for 3+ years for a mobile phone accessory is a great run, but all things must come to an end eventually. We are sad to say, as of early January 2021, the Movi Cinema Robot is discontinued permanently. At least they did put out a page about this on their website, and that's where I pulled this from. And I actually didn't realize that it happened back in January. I just heard about it about 2 or 3 weeks ago. I'd heard rumblings, but I didn't actually believe it. But evidently it's true, and so the Movi Cinema Robot is no more. The interesting thing is, as I'm just reading that, it dawned on me that their wording is kind of strange. They're filmmaking memory capturing kits. I mean, what does that mean? And then they called it a mobile phone accessory. Here's my point. I think they must have looked at this the completely wrong way. They're phrasing that like soccer moms were the ones out buying a $300 gimbal. No, that's not who bought these. FreeFly is an awesome company. They were the very first company to create a gimbal. You remember the videos from Vincent Laforet? I think that's how you say his last name. I've never met him. He's also the guy that started the 5D Mark II revolution with that short film he shot that was in 30p, which drove me crazy. But at the time, it was something we had never seen. That movie was called Reverie, as I recall. Anyway, he was one of the main people to get to work with the original Movi. So the point is, Movi is obviously a very established and excellent company in the gimbal space. And as a matter of fact, I remember when DJI and the Ronin first came out, I thought it looked like utter junk because I had used Movis on some productions. It looked like a knockoff to me. And the irony is today, DJI is much larger than FreeFly. FreeFly seems to be more of a niche company now. They just don't have the resources, the marketing budgets and such, I'm sure. And I think that's also where problems arose for the Movi. And this is all speculation, this part, by the way. I have no insider information to Movi. As a matter of fact, I really never even talked to those guys. I talked to their marketing people once or twice over the years, but no real direct contact with their main developers. And what I mean by that is the price was probably a little bit of sticker shock for the average smartphone person. Speaking of soccer moms, they're not going to spend $300. They'll spend like $100 or $50 on a gimbal. This product was geared towards filmmakers, traditional filmmakers who dabbled in or worked in, like I do, mobile filmmaking. And really those lines are blurring anyway. A lot of people like me who actually make their living in traditional filmmaking, we have mobile filmmaking gear too, and we mix and match the stuff all the time. I'll shoot on a bigger production and I'll have iPhone footage mixed in, especially for like B-roll. I don't often use it as the main camera, again, on larger kind of things, but for YouTube videos and for corporate video stuff, that's a regular occurrence for me these days. It used to not be, but it definitely is now. But after rereading that press release they did, I really do wonder if they saw that product differently than other people did in the way they were developing it. As I said at the top, I thought it was the best smartphone gimbal there is, and I still do. Since its arrival in 2018-ish, that's when I got it anyway, I have used that on every smartphone film I've made. I actually made an entire short film called First Dance entirely shot on the Movi. It was and I still think it is, the smoothest gimbal to use right out of the box. Now, I don't know if that's because of the unique design or if the motors were the strongest or what, but you can grab that gimbal with no experience whatsoever and shoot smooth footage. That's not the case with a lot of gimbals on the market. You've got to learn how to do the ninja walk or shuffle your feet, whatever you want to call it, to be able to avoid the up and down motion that you get with gimbals. And while the Mobi definitely had that, it was not nearly as bad as the others, especially, again, if you know how to do the proper walk. The only negative to the Mobi in my experience is you really can't use the ultra-wide lens. Some people say you can push it out to the far left side and put counterweights on there, but really that kind of defeats the purpose of using the gimbal in my opinion. And I personally never really use the counterweights much anyway. For me, when I use gimbals, I tend to not use third-party lenses. I just use the built-in lenses. And so in that respect, you don't need to use the counterweights. And if you're going to use an ND filter as such. There are NDs that'll just clip on or use like the Moondog or the Moment ND filter connectors to your phone. I like to keep it more simple. But the Mobi can hold a lot of weight too. They never published the payload capacity, which I always thought was weird. It will hold a lot of weight though, a surprising amount of weight. Ultimately, my assumption is it just didn't sell well. If it was a top seller, they would not discontinue it. I find that a little hard to believe because my YouTube videos would reflect that it was very popular. Those videos are some of the more popular videos on my YouTube channel. And anytime I did a post on Twitter even, those posts would be popular posts. Now, I will say that I thought the price was always a little bit steep, again, because it was smartphone only. I think occasionally you could get it for $250, but I believe it was like $275. And so when you're talking about tax and everything, you're talking close to $300. And since the last couple of years, there have been a big influx of what I call hybrid gimbals that'll work with smartphones and small compact cameras and even mirrorless cameras. That probably, in reality, is what hurt sales of the Movi and ultimately made them discontinue it. I always felt if they could get the price down to around $200, it would have sold like gangbusters. There's probably a reason they couldn't do that. They're a smaller company, and who knows, maybe it was an expensive gimbal to produce. I don't know. I also really like the app interface. I didn't use the app much for recording because the video quality isn't nearly as good as third-party apps, and that's the case with all gimbals. But I really liked the simplicity. It reminded me of Blackmagic, how their camera interface is so simple and user-friendly. It was great. I also liked the controls they offered for calibrating the gimbal in particular. Now, they're gimmicky features, and I say that because I don't really use those features on gimbals. I know a lot of people like them. They weren't nearly as robust as DJI. No vertigo mode and that kind of thing. One thing that they kept promising, or I would hear a rumor that they were going to add, was object tracking. They never did add that. Object tracking is one thing that I would use, and it's a good thing for gimbals. But again, the tricky part was you got to use the app to record that, and the video quality just isn't there. It's just not the same. For consumers and soccer moms, I'm sure it's fine. But I don't think that's who bought this gimbal. I was actually just thinking recently, before I heard this news, about a new version of the Movi must be coming. And with how good the phones have gotten the last couple of years, especially the latest iPhone 12 with the 10-bit video recording, and of course I mentioned the ultra-wide lens earlier, it would have been awesome to see a version 2 of the Movi, what it could do. So ultimately, as a mobile filmmaker, but heck, just a filmmaker in general, I'm just bummed. I'm just disappointed that it won't continue. I am admittedly a fanboy of this gimbal. But I'm not alone, because I posted this on my community tab on YouTube, and I'm going to read a couple other people's comments that seem to agree with me. Joel Wilson says, disappointing, but I had a feeling something like this was impending, so I'm glad I bought one a couple months ago. Vaughn Pay, I read that some weeks ago and was wondering why no one has mentioned it yet. Hope Filmic Pro continues to support Movi, or even better, add some features from the native app. Still the best smartphone gimbal I ever used. I agree, and that is one thing that was cool, is that Filmic Pro integrated with the Movi, and that was the best integration of all gimbals. You could control a lot of the controls in Filmic Pro for the Movi, and that was really cool. Rob Stradamus here says, yeah, man, I love mine. I would have loved seeing one made for the bigger phones with cases. I agree with him. Chris Bateman says, I was waiting to get one, but everywhere has been out of stock. And now we know why. Amazon had been out of stock for a while, but Moment was still selling them. And I think, by the way, you can still get a used one or one that was an open box, potentially through Moment actually still. And I'll leave a link in the show notes because on the FreeFly website, they talk about how they are still going to offer support and they'll help people find used ones or something like that. I can't remember completely. They're not abandoning us totally here, but they are discontinuing the product. Andres Vogel says, I love my Movi. So sad that it's being discontinued. I bought it 3 months ago. Bill Robert says, what a bummer. I thought this was the best phone gimbal. There's still a few places you can find some, but they are very expensive. New York Coffee Lover says, oh man, I was waiting for them to release object tracking for it. Indeed disappointed. Yeah, I'm afraid that object tracking is not coming anytime soon. And last one I'll read here is Matthew S. Looked at getting one, but as they are not compatible with the new iPhone 12 wide-angle lens, I passed this up and went with the G6 Max. And I think that is the moral of the story. Those hybrid gimbals like the G6 Max or the Crane M2 or the Moza Mini P have taken over that mid-level market, and they're much more versatile than the Mobi. So it's sad, but at least we had one for a few years, and by the way, I've still got mine. I use it routinely, and I'm not selling it for those interested. I've actually had some people ask me on YouTube if I would sell mine. Nope, I'm keeping it. And it'll probably end up on my shelf one day, but it was such a unique device, and I really, really, really like using it. And I am sad to see it go. But hey, hopefully another company will come up with something similar, or who knows? Maybe FreeFly will realize that they need to come back to this market and bring back something even bigger and better. Rest in peace, Movi Cinema Robot. You will be missed. If you're listening to this on YouTube, drop a comment and please consider subscribing to my channel too, by the way. And if you're on another podcasting platform, then hit me up on Twitter. What do you think? Do you miss the Movi Cinema Robot? Do you care about the Movi Cinema Robot? Do you even use a gimbal now with the new iPhones? Some people say they don't need them. I personally still think you do, depending on what you're shooting, of course. As a reminder, be sure to check out my new YouTube channel. It's under my name, Blake Calhoun. Also, I've got that new audio course coming, and then I've got my existing courses on Filmic Pro, on smartphone cinematography, and on LumaFusion color grading. All these are on the Academy page on my website at iphonographers.tv. Well, thanks for listening. This has been another episode of Almost Professional. I'm Blake Calhoun, and I will look forward to talking to you in the next episode.